would keep eaten?
From traveling around, whenever you see places where people have made charcoal, there's always leftover and even old campfires and stuff, bits of charcoal. And, you know, it's very inert, it's non-toxic, and from seeing that, even I'm sure archaeologists listening know that you find charcoal from thousands of years ago. And so that was very straightforward. And then knowing a bit about this whole biochar movement now that's picking up for soil amendment, and knowing that charcoal is also good for that kind of put two and two together. For us, our main business is making energy-saving stoves, and closing that kind of energy loop of making the waste charcoal dust from the cities, using that to regrow new trees back in the places that are cut down from. That sort of philosophically is a really, really good step forward.
Wonderful, wonderful, kind of joining that circle up. So how do you get the seeds to where they need to be? Because you've got to cover quite a lot of terrain, haven't you?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, actually. You know, there are a million different ways of doing it, we've come to find. The basic tenets really are making sure you get the right type of tree to the right place. So you always ask the people who are buying them, what's being cut down in your backyard? If you say they're cutting down acacia tortilis trees, then plant more of that same type because it grows there naturally and it's being overexploited. We've from anywhere between community groups doing like a Sunday cleanup in small towns to helicopter pilots of conservation organizations like Mara Elephant Project and Big Life Foundation, being able to build in seed distribution in their day-to-day work. And so the beauty of it sort of is that if you are traveling anywhere to somewhere and you know what type of trees are under threat and you're able to replant those same seeds as you're doing your other work, it lowers the cost of doing all of this substantially, because logistics are what plays a very big part of the expense.
Teddy Kianjui there, and his light bulb moment: if you want to keep the critters off your seeds, cover them in charcoal. He was talking to me from Nairobi. He's the co-founder of Seedballs Kenya.
Time to talk food now and the growing importance of meat alternatives. It's a very fast-growing market. We've seen and spoken about alternative sausages, alternative mince, even chicken. Steak, however, has proved to be a bit of a problem because of its texture, apparently. But our next guest thinks he's found a way around this. Eshjar Ben-Shatrit is the CEO of Redefine Meat and joins us now about a 3D printing solution. So what is it about steak that makes it a mimic challenge, and how have you got round that?
Hi, so first, happy to be here. Steak is the most complicated food that we eat because we had an animal spending a few years building it for us as a muscle. And it's a structure that is only in the nature found, but we want to recreate it without using the animal. So we had to come up with a new machine, a new process. It's a 3D printer, but much more complicated and relevant for the problem we're trying to solve than a plastic 3D printer.
Right, and what are you printing with? You're printing with some organic material, sort of vegetable-based matter.
Just like the muscle of an animal, we take proteins and fat and molecules that give you flavor that are from nature, from plants, and we structure them in a way that is very similar to the muscle of an animal, which is only important because then in your mouth it tastes and behaves like a steak. And then your brain has a trigger: I'm eating meat. I'm eating something that came out of an animal.
Right, and it's the way that you build it up with the printer that, I mean, because otherwise I'd imagine you couldn't mix this in a vat or knead it like dough. I mean, I'm not an expert, I don't know how, but what is it about the 3D printing that works so well, in your opinion?
Imagine lining fibers of a plant-based protein that gives you a firm texture, and planting small dots of fat within it that gives you juiciness and melt while it cooks, and coating everything with a thick layer of what we call blood that is very red and juicy, that every bite bursts in your mouth with textures, flavors, and a mouthfeel that is only found in meat. This is very, very critical for human beings. We know it. It's a part of our DNA to recognize this experience and to love it. So when people eat it, they feel it's meat, and it's only possible because of this layering process of a 3D printing,
which comes
that is extremely accurate.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. I mean, obviously, it's a premium product, steak. It's worth money. Does that help the economics of this? Tell us how it works. How much more would it cost me to have steak and chips produced by you than produced by a cow.
I'd like to have my fake.
True. So first, it's a premium product, but it's the biggest part of the industry because we grow cows for the steaks and not for the meat applications. That's the money maker of the meat industry, and that's the giant industry that we're trying to address. 3D printing plant-based meat today is cheaper than growing the same cut of meat in a cow because it takes a few minutes to have a steak, and because the ingredients are very efficient. A cow is an inefficient machine to make food. So it's not only that we have the same texture and the same flavor and same experience. Today we're in price parity with the steak.
So you're saying the economics work already. Thank you very much indeed. That's why they're getting a lot of investors. Redefine Meat, the CEO there, Eshjar Ben Shatrit. Many thanks indeed for joining us. This is Newsday. Lawrence and Claire back after the news.
A BBC World Service and American Public Media co-production with iHeartMedia.
What attracts one person to another? Does having too many choices make us less likely to be happy? I'm Dessa, and I'm finding out why you do what you do.
When you give people too much of a good thing, instead of being liberated by it, they get paralyzed.
First up, dating.
Why do you fall for him or her?
Deeply Human. Sunday at 10 GMT. And in an hour, Hard Talk with Stephen Sacker.
My guest is the music promoter extraordinaire, Harvey Goldsmith. Live music, like the rest of the arts sector, has been clobbered by COVID, and there's a Brexit impact too. So what will it take to restore our cultural fabric?
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello, welcome. You're listening to Newsday on the BBC World Service. Great to have your company. Claire McDonnell and Lawrence Pollard with you.
We're going to be talking about COVAX, the vaccine sharing scheme that is getting underway in many countries this week, including Ghana and Ivory Coast. We'll be live in Accra, hearing from the health authorities there.
We'll also look at how President Biden will handle future relations with Saudi Arabia following the release of a declassified report that concluded the de facto ruler of the kingdom, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, had approved the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
Former US President Donald Trump is back. He's been talking in public for the first time since he left the White House. He says he isn't going to be starting his own political party, but he might run in 4 years' time.
We will have the sports news and the business news live from Hong Kong with Andrew Wood as well, all coming up here on Newsday, BBC World Service. Stay with us. We're back after the latest world news.
Hello, this is Danielle Yarowiecka with the BBC News. Protesters are back on the streets of Yangon, Myanmar's largest city, a day after 18 were killed by the security forces. The demonstrators remain defiantly opposed to last month's military coup. Memorial services are being held for the dead. The detained civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi has appeared in court via video link in the capital Naypyidaw. Jonathan Head has the latest.
She's now appearing in court, and they have applied another 2 charges to the one she already has of possessing illegal walkie-talkies and not observing COVID restrictions during the election campaign last year. I mean, this is a show trial. It's a farce, but in a way, that won't stop the military. They're charging her and President Win Myint, the former head of state, who was her ally. She's not been seen in public since she was detained right after the coup. She's not been able to see or even speak to her lawyer, and her lawyer has had to spend the last couple of weeks moving from house to house to avoid being detained himself.
Donald Trump has used his first speech since leaving the White House to reassert his claim to the leadership of the Republican Party. Addressing a right-wing conference in Florida, he dismissed the idea of forming a new party and suggested he would stand for president again in 2024. Mr. Trump repeated his false claim that he was the real winner of November's election and railed against Joe Biden.
Within his first few hours, Biden eliminated our national security travel bans on nations plagued by terrorism. His first priority was to open our borders to unvetted travelers from Libya, Yemen, Syria, Somalia, and many other countries where strict vetting cannot occur, countries that have tremendous problems.
The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has had a coronavirus vaccine shot at the start of the second phase of India's vaccination campaign. From today, the over 60s and people over 45 with medical conditions will be able to get their first shot, but many remain reluctant. Hundreds of protesters have gathered outside a court in Hong Kong, where 47 pro-democracy activists are to face charges of conspiracy to commit subversion. The activists were arrested under the national security law imposed by China's central government. Danny Vincent is in Hong Kong.
Some held up banners calling for the release of political prisoners. They chanted banned political slogans that once filled the streets during the days of protest. The 39 men and 8 women are facing charges of conspiracy to commit subversion. The charges are linked to an unofficial primary poll last year that aimed to select opposition candidates for a legislative election. All now face possible prison sentences.
You're listening to the World News from the BBC. France's former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, is due to learn the verdict today in his trial on corruption charges. President from 2007 until 2012, Mr. Sarkozy is accused of offering a judge a plum job in return for inside information on an investigation into his campaign finances. He denies the charges. Whatever the outcome, Mr. Sarkozy faces a number of other investigations. The New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has urged people to inform on COVID restriction rule breakers. Ms Ardern said some people involved in the latest outbreak that's pushed the City of Auckland back into lockdown had ignored clear instructions to remain in isolation and had not disclosed their movements. But she said that while some people did dumb things, New Zealand would not get through coronavirus difficulties if wrongdoers were pilloried to the point they did not tell the truth. There's significant anger that one family's actions has put Auckland's 1.7 million people into a one-week lockdown. The Nigerian-American Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala starts work as the new head of the World Trade Organization today. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has said that addressing the health and economic consequences of the pandemic would be a key priority. There are concerns about China's trade policies and how well-equipped the WTO is to deal with them. The road movie Nomadland, about marginalized Americans living in vans, has won the Best Drama Award at the Golden Globes. Chloe Zhao, who made the film, also won Best Director. The late actor Chadwick Boseman scooped Best Actor for the period blues drama Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, 6 months after he died of cancer at the age of 43. His widow Simone accepted the award on his behalf.
He would thank God. He would thank his parents. He would thank his ancestors for their guidance and their sacrifices.
BBC News.
Thank you for the latest news. Hello, welcome. You're listening to Newsday from the BBC World Service. Claire McDonnell and Lawrence Pollard will have a more in-depth look at all the winners at the Golden Globes coming out of LA overnight. We're also going to, in a moment, hear from health authorities in Ghana rolling out the COVID vaccine there. We'll also hear from a lawyer about how that lawyer would like to see President Bush respond to the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, because President Biden is going to be making a statement later today about future relations with the Middle East and Saudi Arabia in particular. And we will also hear this half hour from the author Sir Kazu Ishiguro on his first novel since winning the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2017. Do get in touch with myself and Lawrence on anything you hear on the programme. We love to read your comments. This is the text number you need. It is +44 77 86 20 50 85.
We'll begin with important news in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The COVAX scheme, which is basically aimed at delivering more than 2 billion doses of coronavirus vaccine to people in 190 countries over the coming year, is rolling out in West Africa, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. That means that hundreds of thousands of life-saving doses will be distributed as part of this global collaboration to try to spread the vaccine as far as possible around the country, and not just in the rich countries, which have hogged quite a lot of the early production. Let's speak now to the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Aboagye. Dr. Aboagye, thank you for joining us. This is obviously a big moment. There's a bit of sort of good-looking PR with senior politicians getting the jab and so on. But after that, what happens? What's the timetable?
Well, thank you very much. The timetable, our program has been segmented into 4 key areas. The first group is the health workers and semi-essential services, including the arms of government and other areas. The second group will be vulnerable, which is still like a link up with the vulnerable over 60s, those who have comorbidity, hypertension, diabetes, and obesity will be among the first group of people to be vaccinated. And then we have the next group of other essential services, including utility services, etc., who are all part of the general public. And then the fourth group will be the children and pregnant women, as at the time we get vaccines that are suitable for them, then they'll be rolled. Otherwise, that's the thing. So the plan is to move towards the first phase of vaccinating about 20 million out of the 31 million Ghanaians. And 11 million will constitute the group that are that we cannot be reached because of the current vaccines are not meant for children.
I was going to ask you, it's interesting that you have children there because we often overlook the need. No one really talks about the need to vaccinate children. Now, 20 million is the first target. You've got 600,000 vaccines delivered.
Yes.
Are you going to have vaccines as fast as you can inject them? I mean, or is the injection process going to have to wait while you get more supply?
There are multiple approaches. The COVAX supply, we expect to have another batch early March. And that will be there. We have the African supply platform, medicine platform, under the EU that have also secured some doses that should be coming in. Government is making bilateral contact with other agencies to see how we can procure as a nation. The private sector in Ghana is also mobilizing to buy for the state. And so we have all these multiple approaches coming.
Right, that's interesting. So the private sector is involved, but it only distributes through the state. You're not going to get a twin track. It's not like some people are going to be able to go private and jump the timetable.
No, currently they are all under emergency use authorization, and so that is a state-led. And so the private sector may procure and bring it in, but the states will keep and deploy.
What do you think about the issue of supply? I mean, would there be enough vaccine out there available now for you to vaccinate your entire country? How much longer is Ghana going to have to wait than that ideal situation?
Our current plan stems from now till about October. We expect that by October, we would have been able to, by June, would have done the first 20 million, and by October, we would have completed the entire country. That's all the 31 million people who have been vaccinated.
And it just starts now with a single step. So this is quite a moment, Patrick. What are your feelings about it? A bit daunted?
Well, I think we have planned since October, and so we have all our plans. We have our digital system to enter all our data, and we have the segments ready available for vaccination. Our only hope is that the supplies that have been promised come in as promised, and so that we'll be able to stick to our timetable and vaccinate as many people in the shortest possible time, so that we can be able to get above this horrendous disease that is ravaging not just the health sector, but also the whole economy of the country.
Here. Good to talk to you. Thank you, Patrick. That's Dr. Patrick Aboagye, who is Director General of the Ghana Health Service. Would love to talk more, actually, with Patrick, but we don't have the time, obviously. Also about Africa's experience, why morbidities have been what they are, how the second and possibly third waves are going to hit and affect as well. Lots of coverage of that, by the way, on the BBC website as well. Lots of background on the science. And also, don't forget, Africa Daily. Alan Kasuja talks about vaccine myths and tries to nail some of those issues as well.
Tuesday, BBC World Service. Now, last Friday, a declassified US intelligence report was released relating to the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul in 2018. It concluded that the de facto ruler of the kingdom, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, had approved the killing. And President Joe Biden says he will make an announcement on Saudi Arabia later today. So what can we expect? I've been talking to Amrit Singh, a lawyer with Open Society Justice Initiative. And this was the group that filed a lawsuit to have that intelligence report released. To be honest, it really is a disappointment that the Biden administration has not imposed sanctions on the murderer-in-chief, the Crown Prince. And the fact that the administration has imposed sanctions on all of the other lower-ranking officials identified but left the Crown Prince off the list is striking and a glaring omission, because it sends the message that the Crown Prince can essentially get away with murder. And his role in the systematic persecution of dissidents is essentially irrelevant, and that the United States turns a blind eye to his role in this murder. Some say, though, that by sanctioning his aides and his officials, he will get the message. And Saudi Arabia is a country that America has a lot of tie with. It's a delicate balancing act, is it not? I don't think so. I think that it is essential with a crime of this gravity that the ringleader of the murder be held to account. But we are going to hear more from the Biden administration later today on Saudi. What do you want to hear? We want the Biden administration to impose sanctions on the Crown Prince, the full range of sanctions, travel bans, an asset freeze, and we want the Biden administration to impose an arms embargo with respect to Saudi Arabia. The temporary freeze announcement is precisely that. It's a temporary freeze. The fact of the matter is that a regime such as Saudi Arabia should not receive any arms until such time that Saudi Arabia stops engaging in the human rights violations of this kind. We have seen major steps, though, haven't we? The fact that this intelligence report was released, there are certain bits redacted still. It must give you hope that a very short time into the Biden administration, they are sending out very clear messages that this kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated. We welcome the release of the report. There's no question, but it's not enough. It does end the cover-up that the Trump administration engaged in for more than 2 years with respect to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. But it is crucial that it be followed up with decisive action, not only on the part of the United States, but also the UK and other US allies. As far as his family are concerned, though, is it realistic to think that anyone will ultimately face prosecution for his murder, the people ultimately responsible? There are universal jurisdiction laws in various countries around the world that entitle prosecutors and judges to investigate individuals like the Crown Prince. So I think the Crown Prince will have to watch out for the efforts of law enforcement around the world, lest he be traveling somewhere and be arrested on a warrant that was issued pursuant to one of these universal jurisdiction laws in one of these countries. Stark warning there from Amrit Singh on the movements around the globe of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. Amrit is a lawyer with Open Society Justice Initiative who pushed for the Biden administration to release that intelligence report. And President Biden will make an announcement later today on Saudi Arabia. We will bring that to you here on BBC World Service.
Big friend of Saudi Arabia, of course, was the previous president, Donald Trump, and the Donald is back. I wonder how much you've missed him. In case you need a reminder, he's all about the election which was stolen. Joe Biden is a disaster. The Democrats are a threat to the American way of life, and it's no longer America first, but America last under the new administration. He hasn't been on Twitter. He's been standing up at a conference in front of the faithful, whom he promised there will be a third victory. Yes, that's right, a third victory against the Democrats in 2024.
With your help, we will take back the House. We will win the Senate. And then a Republican president will make a triumphant return to the White House. And I wonder who that will be.
The occasion was a regular conservative conference in Florida called CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. One important message was that the Republican Party will continue to be his vehicle. There had been talk about Trump setting up a third party. No, why, as he asked, would I split the right-wing US vote? We've been speaking about how this all looked with political strategist Lucy Caldwell. Now, she's one of those Republican operators who's run campaigns at all levels, carried out polling, operated the machinery of elections. She was not a Trump loyalist. So what was she seeing happening at CPAC?
Donald Trump said, "Did you miss me?" And the crowd cheered. And I think for his audience, and it wasn't just the CPAC audience, it was the audience watching at home and the media and the so-called Republican establishment and Democrats and really all Americans, this was a sign that the Republican Party is going to stay the course with Trump and with what we may call Trumpism, and that he is not going anywhere and will continue to be the dominant force in Republican politics for the foreseeable future.
So no alternative party. He's owning the party in a way. How Trump loyal is the party?
One of the things Donald Trump did after 2016 is that he did everything he could to make the Republican Party as faithful and loyal to him as possible. He controls the list for fundraising. He controls the technology. It is an enormous asset, and he is shrewd not to think even for a second of ceding that to anyone else. Donald Trump is the manifestation of the total and utter rot of the Republican Party. So maybe he will run. I don't think whether it's Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or Mike Pence or Don Jr., I don't think it matters so much. What's important is that the Republican Party is going to continue to go down this path. Joe Biden so far is proving to be a fairly popular president. He has a very solid approval rating. He's governing from the center. Donald Trump highlighted a few key things that are hot button issues. He preyed upon people's feeling that Democrats want to defund the police, that it's going to be lawlessness in the streets. He preyed upon people's fears that girls' sports are going to be taken over in a politically correct culture of acceptance of transgender Americans. And all of those things, I think, are a preview of how the Republican Party is going to message going forward, which is Democrats are a threat to your American way of life.
What does it mean for you? Has your Republican Party left you now?
Yeah, I think that for a lot of so-called never Trump Republicans or former Republicans, the hard truth is that the party split from people whose views resemble mine a long time ago, before I'd even realized it. But the people who were cheering for Trump in that room today, they were there then. There were those fringes that we would have said are fringe groups, they were present then. We had convinced ourselves that they were not driving the train, and they are. So I think that when one comes to terms with these sorts of shifts, it's important to be honest about the fact that we should have seen Trump coming long before he came down that escalator.
And we all remember that moment. Political strategist Lucy Caldwell there. Let's get the sports news. Here's Al.
And after all the controversy surrounding the African Champions League matches involving South African sides not being given visas to enter Algeria or Morocco, the threats not to travel to neutral territory to play the rearranged fixtures, they have finally happened. Mamelodi Sundowns 5-1 winners over Algeria's CS Belouizdad, who played almost the entire game in Dar es Salaam with 10 men. Kaiser Chiefs humbled 4-0 by Wydad Casablanca in Ouagadougou. The Chinese Super League champions, Jiangsu FC, have been shut down by their owners. The club won their first title in November, but owners Su Ning say they will cease operating immediately as the company focuses on the retail arm. And in the Premier League, Manchester United boss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer claimed refereeing decisions were being affected by outside influences after his side denied a penalty for a clear handball in their goalless draw with Chelsea.
Thank you, Al Ross. Let's get the business now. Andrew Wood is standing by at the business desk in Hong Kong. Andrew.
Yeah, well, President Joe Biden scored his first legislative victory over the weekend. You may remember the House of Representatives approved his coronavirus relief package. That was worth $1.9 trillion. So what comes next? Let's talk now to Mark Ostwald, who's chief economist at ADM ISI. Good morning to you, Mark. What does come next? Is this money going to change the course of the American economy and make sure that it comes out of the coronavirus pandemic unscathed?
Well, first of all, we're going to have to see what amendments are made in the Senate, because it still has to pass in the Senate. And once it is going to be amended, above all, the demand for a minimum wage being doubled to $15 is going to be taken out. There will be other amendments, and it will have to go back to the House. Most important thing, though, really is the timing, because there are a whole load of benefit packages which are due to expire in the middle of the month. So there is some pressure there. Will it change the American economy? I think we talk about this as a stimulus package. It's not really a stimulus package at all. It's a support package. The stimulus package would really come much later in the year when Mr. Biden outlines his infrastructure spending package, and that would be something very critical there. As with everywhere else, I think the key issue here is always this balancing act that governments have to make, and indeed central banks, to balance out how if we do get the promised recovery as the vaccine rollout increases, when do they start to withdraw some of these support measures? And the answer is, the key thing is going to be wait rather than make haste to do that, because otherwise a lot of these recoveries could actually be, I wouldn't say necessarily stop dead in their tracks, but certainly unseated.
Now, there's always the worry when governments start spending lots of money. Traditionally, economists get worried about inflation. Is there any sign that pumping $1.9 trillion into the economy is going to start prices rising and getting out of control?
I mean, this is a really tricky one, because at the moment what we've got, we'll see in the first half of the year, we'll see a lot of base effects from last year where prices fell coming through and inflation will rise. That is expected to be largely transitory. However, what we are seeing in pretty much any sector you care to think of, be it food, be it energy, be it industrial metals, is a lot of supply chain disruptions. Now, some of those, most of those related either to weather effects in case of agriculture or COVID disruptions. The question is, are those going to be proved to be enduring? In which case...
Okay, we'll have to watch that over the next year. Mark Oswald at ADMN ISI, thanks for joining us on Newsday.
Andrew, thanks very much indeed. Now, it's one of the most anticipated books of the year, Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. It is first novel since winning the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2017, and it is about a robot or an artificial friend called Clara. In his first broadcast interview about this new novel, he's been talking to our arts correspondent, Rebecca Jones.
Now, I haven't written one of these stories about some treacherous, sinister robot that takes over the family and then all her mates take over the world. It's not one of those stories at all. I think AI will bring in, but I do have great worries as well. Like, what do we do about the employment situation when the majority of us are not working anymore?
Can you see a time when robots will replace human writers and put you out of a job?
Yeah, I can. I think the point when an AI program, not a robot, but an AI program can write a novel, let us say, that can make me cry. That shows that AI can understand human emotions and it has the capacity for empathy. And when it can do that, it means that it could come up with the next big idea, like communism or Nazism or capitalism.
In a career spanning 4 decades, Kazuo Ishiguro has written 8 novels, including the Booker Prize winning The Remains of the Day, which was turned into a film.
Please leave me alone, Miss Kitten.
How will you show me your book?
This is my private time.
His dystopian drama Never Let Me Go, about human clones whose organs are harvested for transplant, was also adapted for the big screen.
You have to know who you are and what you're created to do.
I reread that book a few years ago, and I thought it's a terribly sad book. I thought, why doesn't the author of this book cheer up a bit? And I think possibly as I've got older, I've kind of got a little bit more jolly. And so Clara is such a character.
Mom, Claire is the one I want. One moment, Josie. Then she asked manager, every artificial friend is unique, right? That's correct, ma'am, and particularly so at this level.
We've seen a number of freedom of speech disputes recently and publishers coming under pressure to drop authors because of their views. I wondered, were there any subjects now that you would feel you couldn't write about?
I think I'm in a privileged and relatively protected position because I'm a very established author and I'm the age I am. I very much fear for the younger generation of writers. And what I'm concerned about is that there isn't self-censorship going on, and that they would not produce the works that they really want to produce or they would have produced that we would really value. Because there is a fear that they're going to get trolled, or that they're going to get cancelled, or there's going to be some sort of anonymous lynch mob that will turn up online.
Kazi Izikuru talking to our arts correspondent, Rebecca Jones, about his new book, one of the most anticipated books of this year, Clara and the Sun. That's his first novel since winning the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2017. Lawrence, the robots are coming, or rather they're here.
I've got to say, maybe he's cheered up. Maybe his books have cheered up because he won the Nobel Prize. Surely that would cheer anyone up, wouldn't it?
Put a smile on your face, yeah.
You're listening to the BBC World Service. The wave of lockdown.
Thought we were going to be on lockdown for 2 or 3 weeks. Who would have known?
We get all our groceries delivered. I teach from my computer.
It's not to go out of the house as much as possible.
In a world that's constantly changing, we keep you informed by looking forward.
Alternative fuels, fuel from fish guts, a bus powered by the remains of coffee grains.
This project basically converting threats into opportunities.
And back.
How are we going to meet and overcome this danger? By industry, by enterprise, by endurance.
Bringing you the latest updates and an in-depth look at the technology that's shaping our world.
The algorithms that are running our lives, how this affects our bodies, our identity.
It was so successful that it started to stretch the limits.
Technology, data and communications will underpin economic and political power this century.
Tech. Across the BBC World Service.
Hello, welcome to Newsday from the BBC World Service with Lawrence Pollard and Claire MacDonald.
Coming up, the COVAX vaccine sharing scheme is delivering its first doses to African countries. The rollout of COVID-19 gets underway today.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that. Also, you'll hear from the WHO, who are partly behind that. And we also talk about the first virtual Golden Globes Awards. Chadwick Boseman, the first posthumous black winner.
BBC News with Jerry Smith. Protesters are back on the streets of Yangon, Myanmar's largest city, a day after 18 were killed by the security forces. The demonstrators remain defiant in their opposition to last month's military coup. Memorial services are being held for the dead. The detained civilian leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has appeared in court via video link in the capital Naypyidaw. Donald Trump has used his first major political speech since his chaotic departure from the White House to reassert control of the Republican Party. In his speech to activists, he repeated his false claim that he was the real winner of November's election and hinted that he may run for president again in 2024. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has had a coronavirus vaccine shot at the start of the second phase of India's mass vaccination campaign. Mr. Modi tweeted a picture of himself being injected with the vaccine. He urged everyone eligible to do the same. Hundreds of protesters have gathered outside a court in Hong Kong where 47 pro-democracy activists are due to face charges of conspiracy to commit subversion. The charges relate to an unofficial primary poll last year that aimed to select opposition candidates for a legislative election. Clearly frustrated, the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has urged people to inform on COVID restriction rule breakers. Ms Ardern said that some people involved in the latest outbreak that's pushed the city of Auckland back into lockdown had ignored clear instructions to remain in isolation. The late film star Chadwick Boseman has won the Best Actor award at the Golden Globe ceremony for his performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. The Netflix show, The Crown, about the British royal family, won the Best TV Drama Series. BBC News.
Many thanks for the latest, Jerry. This is Newsday. Claire and Lawrence with you. We're talking more about that vaccination program getting underway in West Africa, all part of the COVAX global vaccine program. People demonstrating in Myanmar just a day after 18 were shot in an escalation of violence by the police and the army. We'll be talking about the Golden Globes, and it's not just celebrity fluff. There's a lot of diversity issues going on there. And in the sports news, solidarity for Tiger Woods, and also how can a champion club just cease to exist? That's what happened to the football champs in China. All that coming up here on Newsday.
Yes, let's continue the conversation on that big moment in Africa today, the fight against coronavirus, with the Ivory Coast, which is starting its vaccination campaign today, along with Ghana. The country received 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine shipped from India. It's all part of the initiative to provide at least 2 billion doses of the vaccine by the
for the African region with the rollout of the first vaccines that have been provided through COP.
Reading through all these pictures, I've been through 2 of these books already. I couldn't identify any of the guys.
Yeah, we know it's pretty tedious. We'd just like to have you check through a few more volumes if you wouldn't mind.
Look, I don't mind giving you a hand when I got time, but I got things to do today. I got something on for tonight. Have to get a haircut, my suit pressed.
Well, this thing's pretty important to us, Burroughs. I know we're putting you out, but we need every lead we can get. We'd certainly appreciate it if you could just give us a little more cooperation.
I don't know what else I can do. I told you everything I know, just the way it happened.
A few more things we'd like to ask you about. Is there some of the details you didn't make quite clear?
What details? How do you mean?
Details about the hijacking. Mind going over it again for us?
I laid it out for you the last time you talked to me, just the way it went. It's the same as the rest.
Well, how do you mean the same as the rest?
Well, the other hijackings are the same as those, no different.
You pretty familiar with the other jobs, are you?
Well, I followed them in the paper. Read the bulletin the cops got out on them. It's up on the dispatch board in the garage. Hey, is that fresh water in that cooler over there?
Yeah, I think so. Help yourself.
Thanks. I have a couple of aspirin for this headache. Can't take aspirin without water.
Yeah. You've been driving a couple of years for Lavelle Trucking Line, is that right, Burroughs?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What if you'd mind running it through for us again, Burroughs? Maybe there's a few details about the thing that you forgot to mention, huh?
It won't be any different than last time. I pulled out from the loading dock about 6 o'clock yesterday morning, hauling a load of Scotch whiskey over to Phoenix. Pulled up for the red light at Alameda and Jackson. That's when the guy pulled open the door and got in next to me. Put a gun in my ribs, told me to look straight ahead. The first thing he did was hand me a pair of goggles and tell me to put them on. Same kind the welders use. Front of the lens was covered with tape. I put them on. I couldn't see a thing. Guy took over the wheel and started driving.
Well, did you have any idea what direction you were heading in?
No, not with the goggles on. I tried to follow at first, but I got all mixed up. Couldn't tell where he was driving. Made quite a few turns. He drove about 20, 25 minutes, I guess, before we pulled up. That's where the switching point was. 2 more guys met us there. I could only tell by the voices. They pulled me out of the truck and put me in a car.
Well, can you tell us anything at all about that transfer point? I mean, were there any sounds, anything like that that give you an idea that maybe where you were?
Well, I figure it must have been someplace out in the valley, pretty far out. No traffic sounds at all, just crickets, things like that. He got me in that car, drove around about an hour, I figure. And they put me on the side of the road, told me to leave the goggles on for 10 minutes, and then they drove off.
Well, how about those 2 men at the transfer point? If you heard their voices again, you think you could recognize them?
I don't know. I doubt it. They didn't say too much. Not that I heard, anyway.
I'm just curious, Burroughs. How is it you thought of calling your company first instead of the police?
Well, it's their cargo, a whole load of whiskey. If somebody hijacked it, I figure the company ought to be the first to know.
I'd like to ask you just one more question. There's no offense intended here.
Yeah?
You ever been arrested?
What? What'd that have to do with it?
Well, probably nothing at all. Have you ever been arrested?
I'd like to set you straight on it right now. If you think I was working inside on this thing, you got it wrong. I didn't have anything to do with it.
And there's nothing to worry about, is there?
All right. Yeah, I've been arrested.
When was that, Burroughs?
About 10 years ago. It was back east, West Virginia.
What was the charge?
Hijacking.
Our record showed no previous arrests for Frank Burroughs. For the next few days, he was kept under observation. When we got the kickback from Washington, it showed Burroughs had one previous arrest, the one he told us about, for hijacking. We checked all his friends, relatives, and associates. We found nothing suspicious. His employer said that they were aware of his police record, but they told us that Burroughs was one of the best drivers they had. There was nothing to link him with a series of hijackings which had been going on all over the city for the past month. Our crime lab checked the pair of goggles which Burroughs had been forced to wear during the hijacking. They were an ordinary industrial type, easily obtained and impossible to trace. Other than those belonging to Burroughs, there were no fingerprints on them. Late that afternoon, the missing truck and trailer was found empty in a deserted section of the valley. No latent fingerprints or other physical evidence. 9 a.m. the next morning, we met with Captain Didion.
Cargo's gone, huh? Not a trace of it. That's it, Skipper. High-grade Scotch whiskey, 150 cases. Got out of the boat from all the liquor wholesalers. Serial numbers listed. That ex-con Burroughs, nothing turned up on him?
No, nothing. We double-checked everything about him. He's clean.
You didn't get a thing off that abandoned truck?
No prints, no physical evidence. Seems like they got it down to the side.
Tell that to Tad Brown. He's getting all the kicks from the warehouse operators. 30 days and 6 hijackings. How about moving faster?
Well, as you know, we've got 12 stakeouts running down freight roads, Skipper.
Yeah.
Incoming, outgoing. Got 3 girls in the stats office doing nothing but making runs for us. No new suspects. We got a meeting with an informant after lunch. He figures he may have something. There's nothing to bank on.
How about an inside tip-off on these jobs? Any indication the gang's working something like that?
No, nothing definite, Skipper.
8.78 kilometers, 435 calories burned.
Working for the trucking line. No reason to think any of them had a hand in it.
Excuse me, man. Didion. Yeah. Live Oak near Trenton Avenue. Yeah, I got it right. Thank you. We got another truck early this morning. Where? There's the location. Better move on it. Looks like they got their signals crossed.
How do you mean?
Doesn't make sense. The cargo they hijacked.
What was it?
A load of toothbrushes.
9:23 a.m. Ben and I drove to the intersection of Live Oak Drive and Trenton Avenue in the Hollywood Hills, where we located the latest driver to fall victim to the gang of hijackers. His story was the same as the others. He'd stopped his truck for a red light at a deserted intersection when a man jumped on the running board and pointed a gun at his head. The man with the gun took over the wheel and forced the driver to put on a pair of blacked-out welder's goggles. Then the truck was moved to a remote spot where the driver was transferred to a car and later released in a remote section of the Hollywood Hills. The hijacked truck was found empty a day later. And again, there was no physical evidence, no fingerprints. The driver could add little to what we already knew. The only point that made the case any different from those that had gone before was the cargo that had been stolen, a load of toothbrushes. We began an immediate check of the neighborhood where, according to the driver, he was first held up. It was a fairly remote intersection in the San Fernando Valley. After 4 hours of interviewing ranchers and gas station attendants, we talked to the operator of a practice driving range for golfers located just off the highway. His name was Fred Garrison.
Matter of fact, I did notice something out of the ordinary this morning. A little before 6 a.m., I think. Spotted this big semi turning off on that dirt road down the highway there.
Now, which dirt road is that, Mr. Garrison?
Oh, right up the highway there. See it? Oh, yeah. It turns off by that clump of trees. Couldn't figure out why a big truck and trailer would be taking that road. Doesn't make sense.
How do you mean, sir?
Well, it's a dead end. No reason why a driver would turn off there by mistake. There's a big sign right there at the intersection that says not a through street. Right there, see it? Plain as day.
Wonder if you could describe the truck for us, Mr. Garrison.
Well, it's pretty good size. One of those big aluminum jobs. Black lettering on the side, I think. Yeah, it turned off the highway, went down the dirt road a little ways, and then it turned off into that grove of trees, and the driver cut the light.
Did you notice any activity going on at all?
No, I didn't. Oh, maybe I should have walked over and checked it. I figured it was just some truck driver pulling up to catch a few inches of sleep. My boy Dave was with me at the time. Wanted to check it, but I told him to mind his own business. He says a couple of minutes after the truck pulled in, he saw a gray sedan come down the road and park next to the truck right in that same clump of trees.
Well, now, didn't all this look a little suspicious to you, sir?
Oh, I suppose so, in a way. I just don't like to meddle where it's not my business, that's all.
Well, did your boy Dave get a good look at this gray sedan? Do you know that?
You want to come in the office, sit down?
Sure. Oh, thanks.
Hey, sit right there if you like.
Fine, thank you.
Let's see, now, where were we?
About your boy Dave?
Oh, yeah.
You said that he saw a gray sedan pull in next to the truck over in that clump of trees. Did he mention anything else that he noticed about the car? I mean, other than the fact that it was a gray sedan?
Well, yeah, I think he did say something else about it. Now, let's see. I wasn't listening too close at the time. Dave's doing some errands downtown for me right now. He'll be phoning in pretty soon, though. I can ask him about it then. He paid a lot more attention to the thing than I did.
Well, how long were the truck and trailer and that sedan parked in the grove of trees? Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, not too long, maybe 15, 20 minutes. The car pulled out first and took off down the highway away from town, that way, see? And the truck and trailer left a few minutes after. What do you figure they were up to? I've got an idea. What time was that again, sir, when you saw the truck turn off the highway onto the dirt road? About 6 a.m. Maybe a few minutes one way or the other.
I wonder if you'd show us the exact spot where you saw that truck parked, would you?
Oh, sure. Here. You want to come over here with me to the window?
All right.
Now, you see the clump of trees there?
Yeah.
Eucalyptus.
Mm-hmm.
Are they bordered right on the road?
Yeah.
Maybe that's him now.
All right.
Here's the fairways. Oh, yeah, Dave. How'd you make out? Oh, fine. No. Listen, a couple policemen here now. They're asking about that truck and that gray sedan you saw up on the road this morning. Want to know what you noticed about the sedan besides the color? How's that? Oh, you did, Yeah? Well, you better head back here. They probably want to talk to you about it. All right, Davey. Bye.
What do you have to say?
I'll be back in about 20 minutes. I figured you want to talk to him.
Well, how about the sedan, sir? Did you get a pretty good look at it, did he say?
Yeah, I guess so. He got part of the license number.
Fred Garrison's son, Dave, returned and gave us all the pertinent facts about the truck and the gray sedan, which he'd noticed in the neighborhood early that morning. His description of the truck and trailer, what he saw of it anyway, matched closely with that of the latest vehicle to be hijacked. He described the car as a gray sedan, and he said it looked to him like it was a late model Nash, but he couldn't be sure. He said the first 3 units on the license plate were 7T7. The location in the grove of trees where the truck had been spotted was checked thoroughly. Outside of some indefinite tire tracks, there was no physical evidence. 4:10 p.m., we put in a call to DMV and asked for a rundown on the 3 license plate numbers. The next morning, DMV returned to us a list of more than 1,000 auto registrations, which began with the figure 7T7. We went down the list and gradually eliminated 600 of these as not being physically close in description to the car seen by Garrison's boy, Dave. We kept checking. Almost 300 more on the list were registered in distant parts of the state. That left us with over 100 vehicles registered in or around Los Angeles to check out. It went slow. 3 weeks passed. We narrowed the list down to 23 possibles. Tuesday, December 10th. We were checking registrations with addresses in the east end of the city.
What's your name on this one again?
Perry. Walter R. Perry.
Garage is straight back to drive. There's a car parked in.
Yeah. Let's try the bell again.
What do you say?
All right, let's give the car a look.
People sure do get careless. Nobody home, garage wide open, car sitting there.
Qualifies so far.
You want to check the steering post there, registration thing? Check out all right?
Just a minute.
What do you got there?
Here. Found these under the seat.
Oh, maybe they're home.
Here's a pair of goggles. Take a look. Yeah. Both lenses covered with tape.
You're in the forgery division of the Metropolitan Police Department. Handwriting analysis.
Now let's check it against the forged letter. The capitals print evenly. The O's and the A's are clean. No, this isn't the typewriter we're looking for. Yeah. Capitals print high. A's and O's are solid. P's slanted. This is the one.
It's the same with cigarettes. There are many king-size brands to choose from, but when you know all the facts, you'll make your choice Fatima. Here are those facts. Fatimas are the same in length and circumference, 85 millimeters long, 1 1/64 inches around. And Fatima filters the smoke exactly the same long distance as any other king-size cigarette. But in Fatima, the difference is quality. Remember, Fatima gives you extra mildness, a much different, much better flavor and aroma. You get all the advantages of extra length, plus Fatima quality, which no other
videos of all these
king-size
plants I got
cigarette
popping
has.
up
Fatima,
do that more
best of all king-size cigarettes. Definitely the best quality in its class. But
clear memory.
He certainly isn't. Catherine Guiardi, thank you for the update. Joining us from Paris, Nicolas Sarkozy, former French president. He'll find out his fate later today. Let's get all the sports news now. Here's Al.
And the second round of African Champions League games involving South African sides has finally taken place.
Of adding physical gold to my portfolio.
Well, I wouldn't do it. It's volatile and it doesn't pay a dividend.
Really? Because I researched gold, and it actually has averaged over 8% a year since 2002. That's a lot more than I'm getting with you.
But you're going to have to pay to store it, and how are you going to sell it?
Actually, it's easy to store. And it costs less than your yearly management fee. And I found out that through Guildhall, that buying and selling happens on a phone call.
Have you ever thought about owning physical gold or silver and been
Jeremy Lin made the remarks as an investigation on his claims that someone called him coronavirus is underway.
I think it's gone up at times like 1,900, like 1,900%, and in certain areas. And then there's, one in four Asian Americans have experienced some type of anti-hate since the pandemic started. 1 in 4, that's a lot. And so that's just something that is near and dear, obviously, to my heart, but something that, again, is not just, and it's not just about one group. It's how can we address this holistically as well, and so but that is one portion of it which I was bringing to light.
The former NBA star is now playing for the Santa Cruz Warriors, the G League affiliate of the Golden State Warriors. In tennis, David Goffin has claimed his 5th ATP Tour title. The second seed beat top seed Bautista Agut 5-7, 6-4, 6-2 in the final of the...
On my hit shit, well I'm running, disassemble it on some sick shit. Take the springs out so we won't shoot in ballistics, and that's how... They try to throw a gun on me, it's only allegations. If it was mine, it was in case they tried to run on me. 3 to 5 is what they asking, but I won't fight the thing. Got a little daughter to raise, so I'ma fight the case. When I got that phone call, man, I couldn't talk the clock. You were angel, now wait in that wooden box. That's a vision I could never remove. And if I go, it's cause I'm dancing with the devil in the heavenly mood. That's like mixing water with oil and crippling with their blood in that. Fuck this game shit, I just really want my brother back. I want that joy put back in his mother's heart. I want them bullets reversed that hit his brother's heart. When I back the ratchet ahead and back in the ways. And we ain't friends, this ain't back in the day. 2017, I probably put the map to his face. Fuck these shows, I'm strapped up at the back of the stage. I'll shoot it up and then I'll join the crowd. On my hit shit, well I'm running, disassemble it on some sick shit. Take the springs out so it won't shoot in ballistics. And that's how you get away with charges on some stick shit. Yeah, I was raised with the savages. Sure, with them savages, never ran in my average kids. I only slapped back and stood tall. And this rap shit ain't the only way I put my hood on. Put my hood on with a black mask and a broken strap. Still bang 6 and dented whips when I hold it back. Why I roll it that in these streets, there ain't no holding back. Gotta move needing the street busting an older strap. I got 7 in that 5th like my block number. 17 in the clip for my blockbusters. I ain't gotta wait for my team. This ain't no blockbuster. My young boy was 14 when he shot something. 15 in that Beretta he was. I stayed reppin'. I never changed my sweater in months. Even when I got knocked, nigga, I was reppin' the same. A week later, 10 bands just to get off the cage. Fake love, handshakes and hugs. There's 8 in the snub. That's 2 more than the 38 I gave to my cuz. And if you know me, you know that I've been real. Since I left for you, I'm the block riding big wheels. But I'm a lot older on this block with the big steel. Peanut butter Glock left his brains on the windshield. Rock, paper, scissors, spin, kick like a windmill. 4-5 clip hang lower than the windshield.
They say crime pays, so I'm outside with a 9's wave. Dark clouds follow me everywhere I go. I'm hearing voices talking to me while I'm sleeping at night. Eyes open, can't move, ain't a person in sight. Premonitions and visions, you can see the red in my eyes like the red light underneath the black 45. How you got it done, but you ain't walking with it. It's like a pit bull locked in a cage. Truth through flesh when it bark after it bite. Flee the scene low.
ass nigga don't run. Fake ass nigga go hide. You would tell me it's all for the good, but I know that they telling me lies. These niggas, they trying to disguise, they hate in their eyes when I rise. Like they thought I was really gonna lose, so they all give it up for the wise. Real ass nigga don't run. Fake ass nigga go hide. You would tell me it's all for the good, but I know that they telling me lies. These niggas, they trying to disguise, they hate in their eyes when I rise. Like they thought I was really gonna lose, so they all give it up for the wise. I'ma fly to the stars on my first one, but trust me, it won't be the last one. I'm rating my girlfriend the last one. I think I just put a fast one. When I came in, I won't get your crib. Yo, bitch, she dressed, she damn. You so pathetic, my nigga.
I wonder if there's a grape jelly recipe.
Times is hard, no doubt, different ways to struggle. No stranger to the back, it'll fill you the razor. Yo, Jeezy, if you want that, you ain't gonna see your Even though it's on the grind for the minute, trying to get it out, I've been getting it. These niggas have been sweating it. Don't get out the back, but when the phone, a nigga begging it. I'm way ahead of it, I'll rise upon a nigga letting it off. When it comes to this rap shit, the fuck this, it's always Jeezy low. Man, a greasy folk. I'm out for them notes, but I still keep it close. Case a man try provoke, that's 5 shots through his throat. Listen, if you know, then you know. I'm still on lot of draws, shot and hoes, slashing knives in me clothes. If it's not your beat, don't get involved. Don't be right out to slap a nigga down, and no cases getting sold. Listen, I'm the shooter, you're the victim. I rode out with him and told police away with him. I gave me boys follow tips, slopes to the loops. I said that's for that dude. The next day when it clipped him, I'm back on it. Make the stop the shotty. Said I don't want it. I've got nowhere to put it. Plus it's out of bullets and I hate them shotguns. Cause when it's beef, I've never got nowhere to stuff it. I'm riding out with hand things with bullets that expand. If a hit man by the barbers, he go land by pound. And then he lost. So don't act like you found, man. 8 bills for the bus. If you want that brown tan, listen. I'm trying to stay low off the radar. One night. It's the motherfucking police. Yeah. Like what I did with. I'll show you one time, force you to learn.
Welcome to Mi'kmaq Matters, a podcast.
Overdose. Black and green, bandana, black bandana, black and green bandana, black bandana, black and green bandana, black bandana, black and green bandana, black bandana, black bandana, black and green, black bandana, black bandana, black and green, black bandana, black bandana, black and green, black bandana, black bandana, black and green. I'm that gang shit, I'm that we don't play shit. Let it spray shit, flushing ain't no case shit. Let it bang shit, let your colors hang shit. On that crazy shit, chopper spit and flame shit. Know you hate shit, know you mad today, bitch. We done made it, off the block we skated. Massachusetts, made its way to New York State. Puzzle piece gang, we can take this whole country. One block at a time, bricks in half, quarters down. Flip it one more time, stacking paper, godless crime. Facts like shit, you dealt with on the real quick. Extra clips, glass and filled up to the tip. Black bandana, black and green bandana. 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 Black bandana, black bandana, black and green. 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 Tony Montana, we ain't got your shit on us. Now, throw children in the car because we get no fuck. Grew up bad, grew up in signs and represent. Play with the crew. Then KT guns slit your neck. We dangerous like Buster Bus in 97. We aiming bustin', you wanna stairway to heaven. I'm about to like you, get the fact I'm fucking white. I got that heart that's soft, I cook that fucking white. In my kitchen, serving beans, feeding addiction. My money straight, this life I lead you fucking bitchin'. I wave from flags of black and green like LA Crips. But we ain't them, this puzzle piece came here, bitch. Black bandana, black and green bandana. 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 Black bandana, black bandana, black and green. Black bandana, black bandana, black and green. Bandana, black and green.
Come on, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, bitch.
Black bandana, black and green bandana. Black bandana, black and green bandana. Black bandana, black bandana, black and green. Black bandana, black bandana, black and green. Black bandana, black bandana, black and green. Black bandana, black bandana, black and green.
L'étude publiée par Arnaud Fontanet, épidémiologiste à l'Institut Pasteur et membre du conseil scientifique, remet les niveaux de contamination à leur place. Il faut accepter l'idée de
black bandana, black and green bandana. Black bandana, black and green bandana. Black bandana, black and green bandana.
Genius' ideas.
Et ils sont vraisemblablement moins contagieux. Les écoles
ne sont pas plus à risque d'être infectées que des personnes du même âge et du même sexe. Pour autant, si l'épidémie venait à flamber, la fermeture des lieux d'éducation ne doit pas être tabou en minimisant toutefois les risques sociaux.
Si on fait cette mesure, privilégier quand même l'alternance avec l'enseignement à distance pour les collèges et les lycées. L'intérêt de l'alternance, si vous faites ça une semaine sur deux, c'est casser les chaînes de transmission, retarder au maximum la fermeture des écoles primaires parce que
quitte à passer par des protocoles stricts dans les cantines ou les transports scolaires, c'est là et non dans les classes qu'on lieu les contaminations.
Dernier messager. Et pour éviter de perdre le contrôle dans les écoles, le gouvernement accélère le déploiement des tests salivaires. L'objectif est d'atteindre rapidement les 300 000 prélèvements par semaine. 20 départements sous surveillance et d'éventuelles restrictions supplémentaires en discussion aujourd'hui, notamment en Ile-de-France. Les agglomérations de Dunkerque et Nice retrouvent, elles, le couvre-feu après un premier week-end confiné. Et puis l'Allemagne impose dès ce soir minuit un test négatif à tous les Mosellans, y compris les 16 000 travailleurs transfrontaliers à cause du variant sud-africain. 60% des contaminations dans le département. La France discute toujours avec l'Allemagne, qui a pris une décision brutale selon le député En Marche de la Moselle, Christophe Arendt.
À quoi bon demander de Berlin et Paris de faire de la concertation locale? À quoi bon une coopération transfrontalière quand on prend les décisions comme ça de manière abrupte et autoritaire?
Emmanuel Macron en Seine-Saint-Denis ce matin, le chef de l'État vient d'annoncer 30 000 offres de stage sur la plateforme Un jeune, une solution. Après son procès pour corruption, Nicolas Sarkozy attend la décision du tribunal de Paris à 13h30. L'ancien président est soupçonné d'avoir promis un poste à un haut magistrat en échange d'informations dans une autre affaire. Margot Steve, le parquet national financier avait requis 4 ans de prison dont 2 fermes.
L'enjeu est lourd pour l'ancien président et pour ses complices. Cette peine, si elle est prononcée, serait une peine de mort sociale, professionnelle et politique, avait dénoncé l'un des avocats de la défense. Mais pour le parquet national financier, la sanction doit être à la hauteur de la faute. On ne peut pas admettre qu'un ancien président oublie la République, avait requis le procureur pendant le procès. Cette affaire a eu des effets dévastateurs. Elle a, selon lui, abîmé l'institution judiciaire, la profession d'avocat et l'image présidentielle. Du côté de la défense, on dénonce au contraire un désert de la preuve. Il faut accepter de dire que la justice est faillible et qu'elle a pu se tromper, avait plaidé l'avocate de Nicolas Sarkozy, maître Jacqueline. Selon elle, la peine demandée est aussi sévère que la démonstration fut faible pendant le procès. Elle demande la relâche pour l'ancien président et pour ses
de l'Intérieur, de la Justice et de l'Éducation s'entretiennent aujourd'hui avec préfet et procureur d'Île-de-France. 2 adolescents de 14 ans sont morts la semaine dernière dans 2 accidents en Essonne. La facture plus salée depuis ce matin pour 10 millions de Français qui se chauffent au cuisine au gaz. Les tarifs réglementés augmentent de 5,7%. Aux États-Unis, Donald Trump faisait dire son grand retour. L'ancien président blanchi par le Sénat dans le procès républicain. Il était au rassemblement annuel des ultra-conservateurs à Orlando, en Floride. Perdu la Maison Blanche, affirme encore Donald Trump, toujours dans son déni volontaire de la réalité. Qui sait, je pourrais décider de débattre une 3e fois, déclare l'ancien président. En Birmanie, l'ex-chef du gouvernement Aung San Suu Kyi dans la justice, accusé par l'agence d'avoir enfreint des règles commerciales et sanitaires pour protester au lendemain de manifestations pro-démocratiques violemment réprimées au moins de 10 personnes tuées. Et puis en rugby, l'entraîneur du 15 de France a bien quitté la lutte sanitaire. Fabien Galtier est allé voir jouer son fils à Paris il y a 3 semaines, dit le président de la Fédération française de rugby, Bernard Laporte.
Je ne vois pas. Il y aurait un problème là-dessus.
Just wait till it goes all the way through. I don't know what the fuck. What do you think they're
Bernard Laporte, président de la Fédération française de rugby sur France 2. Ça se resserre en Ligue 1 de football. Match nul entre Lille et Strasbourg et entre Marseille et Lyon. 4 points séparent Lille du 4e Monaco. 9h06.